Hey, this is Beyond the Letter. Pastor Adam is not going to be in with us. He is currently in Israel. Exciting stuff, but filling in for him is going to be Jermaine, and we're going to do a special episode on Gen Z. Guys, we have a special show today. We have our Gen Z contributors in the house today.
Yep.
We
Let's
have,
go.
Yep. And so we have Camille.
Hello, everybody. So good. So glad to be here today.
Awesome.
She's been practicing.
Got that
Yeah, I'm like in the mirror.
$1 million
Right.
smile
Oh
right
my
there.
God. Thank you.
And we got Alize.
Yeah, usually behind the camera. Now I'm in front of it.
Hey.
Big moves.
And we have Jermaine, who's kind of on the
Yo.
cusp of Millennial and Gen Z.
Yeah.
Right,
You made it. You made it.
Right. Now, Camille, you've attended our church for quite a while, right? How long?
I'm 20, so 20 years.
Dang.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Since you were a baby?
Like
Okay,
literally since I was a baby.
okay.
My parents started coming when we were on Utica, so I've been here
Yeah.
for literally as long as I can remember. I've never gone anywhere else besides here because I love it. But
Oh, fantastic. We like to
Yeah.
hear that.
Awesome.
And
It's
now,
pretty long.
how old are you?
I just turned 20. I've been 20 for exactly 1 month today.
Okay.
Dang.
Well, happy late birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And Alize, how old are you?
I'm 19, so my birthday's in 28 days.
Hey.
Okay.
End of the month.
In case I forget, happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right. And you've been at this church for how long?
About a year
Okay.
and a few months.
But you grew up in the church, right?
Yeah,
You have family
yeah.
in the church.
My grandparents are pastors.
Okay,
So church
okay,
has been
right.
my whole identity.
Yeah,
All
El
my
Monte,
life.
right?
Yeah, El Monte.
Yeah. And then Jermaine.
Yeah, 26 years old.
26, all right.
Yes, right on the cusp of Gen Z and Millennials.
Yeah, right.
So-
And you're also our junior high pastor.
Yeah. Well, not a pastor, but
And-
middle school director. Yeah.
And you work with high school a lot too, right?
Yeah.
You
We
kind
do
of-
like youth ministry full on. So that's like, that's what we do. Middle school ministry specifically, that's what I focus on, but then help out all around youth ministry, everything.
So like what is the Gen Z like cutoff? Like what's the youngest before you're not Gen Z anymore?
Me, yeah, 1996.
No, that's the oldest.
Other way.
Oh, the
What's the
youngest.
youngest?
I believe it's 14 years. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
right now I'm 26.
Freshman.
So people who are freshmen in high school.
Okay, freshman in high school. Okay. Yeah.
It's trippy to think about.
Right.
Because the weirder that like what makes me feel old is when people say what year they were born. What year were you
Okay.
born, Alize?
2002.
That's not that bad, but that's crazy. It's like
When
No,
you,
when
yeah,
people
people
start
say
telling me
like the
they're born, like-
tens. I'm like, no way you
like,
exist.
middle school. Yeah, middle
Right.
school.
No way
Right.
you are alive right
I'm
now.
like, it still
I'm not
is
even that old.
2010. What do you mean?
Yeah, middle schoolers would be like, oh yeah, I was born in 2011, and you're like, I know where I was in 2011.
right.
Like I have a
like
memory.
yesterday, yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
scary, dude.
And then I'm millennial, so I'm 34 years old. I'm a millennial, and I've been here for my entire life as the pastor's son, the senior pastor's son. But I'm excited about today because I want to learn Gen Z culture and generation. Because here's the thing, I'm a big fan of Gen Z. Love Gen Z. I think they're the greatest generation to ever exist.
Oh, wow.
I think
That's
they're
a
the
big
hardest
statement.
working.
Wow.
I think they're the hardest working generation, the smartest generation. No, I'm trolling
I'm
boomers right
like,
now.
okay,
I
sounds
don't know who
good.
you've met, but
I'm trolling boomers because boomers love to hate on Gen
Right.
Z.
Yeah.
So I like to throw it back at them every now and again. But I really am. I really do love Gen Z, and I love Gen Z because I'm kind of I'm a very curious person. I love humanity. Like I'm very curious with, what's going on in the world. And Gen Z in particular has really stood out to me recently because I've been on a lot of social media lately, the past few years because I've been dealing with like a physical injury, and so I've been bedridden a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been on the social media a lot more than I would have if I was like a normal functioning,
yeah.
pastor or whatever. So, but I just noticed some things about Gen Z, and they're just so unique because millennials, we're really the last generation to not grow up with the internet.
Yeah.
So we're the last generation in history that will grow up with just television and playing outside as our form of, so we can relate a lot more with Gen X and with boomers in that regard, in which you just play all day with your friends outside, skateboarding, basketball. You don't have screens in front of your face for hours on end, iPads, social media, and so on. So it's really unique in that. And I just wonder how much of that has made Gen Z a unique sort of generation.
Yeah.
Along those lines. What do you guys think about that? Like just growing, the difference in like being the first generation to like grow up on the internet.
I mean, for me personally, I'm a little in the middle because for a good portion of my childhood, like I didn't really have screens. Television, yeah. iPad and stuff and a phone and stuff like that, I didn't get that until like I was a teenager. So that for me is kind of like I relate more to you guys in the sense of like being outside, hanging out with friends. Like I was the only child, so I just had to be creative. I drew a lot. I played with like toys. I did a lot of other things. Like TV was very low on my priority. I'd watch like Food Network at the age of 9. Like that was my entertainment, but it was very rare that I watched TV. I had the very old one, like very old.
Big
little box, the box, yeah, with like the old control has like 3 buttons on it. That's what I had. So I don't know about Camille, how you grew up.
So I know let me restart what I'm saying. My sisters are a lot older than me, and in comparison to the way that they grew up and the way that I grew up is completely different. So the smallest age gap is 8 years. So my sisters are all millennials. Okay. Like, they're old. A lot older than me. They're not old. Millennials, you guys are not old, I promise. But I'm saying like there's a big No,
I'm just kidding.
There's a big age gap. And like for me growing up, like I had my first phone, I got it when I was 12 because I was like taking the bus from school and my parents were like, I want you to have a phone if you're gonna do that. But like now there's kids who have phones at like 8 years old and I'm like, what are you even doing with that? Like, what? But like, yeah, I grew up with TV and I did a lot of sports. I was active. Like, I was always here. Like, I always was doing something. I was never like looking at the TV for more than like 3 hours of my day. I wasn't spending that much time. And I felt like it was good because like I was actually able to socialize because like people don't do that anymore. It's like you're doing it over your phone. And even I catch myself doing that. Like, I'm like, oh, I just talked to that person. I actually haven't talked to them in a year, but I like texted them 2 days ago, type of situation. So it's like, you forget like that you're so desensitized to like the idea of like being able to like have that instant technology. But like it did affect me growing up, and like now it's affected like the way that I live my life in comparison to my sisters. Like I'll definitely like feel more called to like go on my phone for longer than my sisters are. And so it's just like, it's weird. But I also did spend a lot of time outside, a lot of time socializing, like acting, doing stuff, getting dirty, eating mud, stuff like that, the basics.
Mud pies, playing with the worms, like all the animals, all the insects. I was out there too.
Like hanging out with ants,
right?
Naming them.
They were my besties.
Naming them.
Rob, Gerald, and Bob.
For real.
Have you ever ate an ant before?
Oh, totally. Every flavor.
The red ones too?
Red one,
they're spicy, right?
Yeah, they burn a little bit.
See, that's one thing I never did. I never ate insects. But I play with roly-polies.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yep,
okay.
What about you, Jermaine? You're kind of...
Yeah, I grew up like going, like, playing outside and having to go in when the street lights came on. Like that was like my childhood, and gaming a lot.
Gaming,
so, like,
game culture.
Yeah,
that was big. Yeah,
just I'm not gonna say any particular video game, but just literally hours. Like,
right.
Saturdays, waking up as early as possible to play as much as games as possible. That's what Gabriel and me, we grew up together, literally best friends. But so that like that was our scheme. We'd be like, how can we stay up the latest and wake up the earliest so that we can maximize our gaming?
Right.
Drinking energy drinks and stuff.
So what was your first console that you played?
A Nintendo. Well, I remember only wanting to like go to my mom's because my brother had a Sega Dreamcast.
Okay.
So he had Sonic.
Okay.
So I played it with him a lot.
Okay.
So gaming was like, I played outside a lot because there wasn't a lot of online gaming yet. So when we wanted to actually socialize with humans, we played outside, and we had that desire still. So it was a lot of both. Okay.
Yeah.
When I look back at it.
Okay. Yeah, mine was a Super NES, right? My earliest memories, 5 years old, Sega, the OG, Sonic. And then when PlayStation 1 came out,
I don't know what either of those are. I'm so sorry, guys.
I've never heard of a Sega Dreamcast?
No.
Wow.
I just hear like the cricket sound in my head when they're talking right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah. So the millennials, like, we grew up on the cutting when it first started becoming the graphic processors and stuff like that. But what do you guys think about this thought that's going around where it's commonly said that, you know, the Gen Z generation is now just living their lives on the internet, and so there's not as much relationships going on, and that, you know, because of that, the Gen Z is more lonely. It's a lonelier generation, you know, because the stuff on the internet that's taking place is very superficial, and it's, you know, Instagram and so on. You're not directly engaging with another human being. You're not learning communication skills. It's not like real. And so and the byproduct of that they say is that we're seeing is a rise in loneliness. You know, do you guys see that in your generation? Like, do you see that link, or is that just?
Yeah, totally. I actually was literally watching a TikTok the other day, and it was like, TikTok isn't healthy because in 10 minutes you can see like 3 people who are divorced, like 7 people lost their cats, 2 people died, and like you just go through this rush of emotions in a really short time span that is probably not healthy for our brains to be going through, to the point where, like, if you talk to someone who is Gen Z, and I've even caught myself doing this, it's really hard to keep eye contact with somebody because you're so used to just stuff changing in front of your eyes. Like, same with the kids when they're watching Cocomelon, like, they say it's not good for them because it's shortening their attention span. I used to be able to like listen to someone talk. Now it's like I got a very short attention span before I shut my my brain out on you.
Totally.
And it's totally subconscious. Like, I'm not doing it intentionally. It's just because of the amount of media I've been consuming, especially during the COVID era when that was all you had was TikTok. Like, I could tell you I was on TikTok all day, every day. And
screen
class
time
was online.
Like 15.
Yeah, it was insane. I mean, even now it's still pretty high, but at least I am aware of it and I try to manage it.
Yeah, that's wild. I really feel like I was the guinea pig for like social interaction, where my generation was, or my age specifically, because in high school when you want to start talking to girls, and you would talk to them first on my Facebook. But I remember like a lot of interactions where me and this girl would be like kicking it off through talking, but when we hung out, it was awkward.
Yeah.
And I've never been on a dating app, but I remember like a few times setting up a date with the girl, going to the movie. When we talk, it's like jolly and dope, and me and this girl connect. And then when we hung out, it was like weird. And I'm like, and she felt the same way, and it'd be like, we never talk again.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, when I look back at that, I was like, we were the guinea pig, because now all the dating apps and stuff, people, I don't know. Obviously, you could, like, the connection is probably unhealthy the way, because like Tinder, one night stand, connotation, all that stuff. But I feel like they've now like conditioned people to learn the balance of both. But for me, we'd be awkward and stuck. Like, I don't know if you guys feel like that. And when you ever talk to somebody first on social media, and then you meet them, you're like, oh, hello, how are you?
Yeah, it's like you never know like where it's gonna go, because for me, like, I like meeting people in person, because it's like I get to know the way that you talk, the actual way you're like, your tone, the way that you communicate with people, your body language, all that's really important, and you don't get that online. When you're texting someone, you don't get that.
No.
Even like when I catch myself, like my friend, they'll text me something and I'm like, that was so rude. And then like, they're like, no, I meant it like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, you're not able to catch that online. And for me, I text the same way I talk, and I put a lot of tone, I put a lot of attitude in the way that I talk. But if you can't see that, then I seem like such a jerk. But a lot of my friends have like slowly starting to get that sense like, oh yeah, she texts the same way she talks. Yeah. So let me like put what she's saying, but you wouldn't know that unless you meet me in person type of situation. So it's like, also, you're not able to like really build a true relationship. Personally, for me, I wrote an essay on this. I don't think you can build a true relationship over online yet. Yeah, you can start that that first connection, but that real intimate relationship of what a friendship consists of. Yeah. Like at that point, like I feel like also I can catch myself like when it comes to online, like you're able to think before you think before you speak. I don't really have a good filter most of the time, so it's like on text I'm perfect because I can think before I type, but in person I'll just blurt out whatever I like comes to mind. And like some people think it's funny, I don't even know what's going on half the time, you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's like you're able to stop yourself from doing things when you're texting. You know what I mean? So it's like you're not actually able to be like your true self when you're building relationships online. Like, yeah, it's still cool. Yeah, it's still fun. And I've met plenty of friends online where it's like we follow each other on Instagram, we meet in person once, and we're like, wait, you're kind of cool. And then we start hanging out and you're like, hey, I kind of like you. But it's like you need to hang out with them way more. It's not just this relationship over text. It has to like come to that point. But it also, that first interaction is so awkward. You're just like, Ema, hello. You know, like,
totally.
My name is Jermaine.
Another thing I've noticed with communication online is if you struggle with communication in person, which I'm speaking for myself, like I've done this before, it's easier for you to talk about like your problems with that person over text because you're not having to deal with their reaction to you. You're kind of just like, all right, I'm going to give them what I feel, like what I think, leave it there. I don't have to reply to them right away if I don't want to. Like, you don't have to deal with that, whether it's guilt or anger or sadness or whatever it is. Like, you don't have to deal with those emotions right away. And that's really unhealthy because in a face-to-face conversation, you can't be like, I think I'm going to reply to you tomorrow. Like, you can't.
Yeah, you can't just like leave.
You can't. Like, once you open that can of worms, you got to deal with, you know, the repercussions of it. And you can't do that on text. Yeah. And that's very unhealthy. Very unhealthy.
Shout out to the People's Padre then, Pastor Adam, because I remember like 6 years ago, I had to have a really hard conversation. So I had to ask him how to handle that. And he said, and it was a younger person, and he said, you know, like, because corporate America is like email or like don't text it. You got to email it, and you got to handle these things in a you know, in a formal way. And I remember him specifically like telling me, ask them if they're comfortable texting about it, because when I would talk to this person in person, they were younger. It was like pulling teeth. Like they couldn't formulate, you know, how they felt, what they were going to say. And so he said, like, ask them if they're comfortable texting, and you could handle it through text. And we did. And it, like, we came to a nice resolution. It was awesome. And I just thought about that because that was really game changing for me. Communicating with young people, because you talk to an older person, they're like, no, we can't text about that.
Yeah.
We gotta get on the phone. Me. Yeah. We're not texting about that, which is fine because a lot of people, it does get lost in translation. That's a really real thing. But some people are good at communicating their emotions through text. Right. And why not speak in that realm if that's the realm and the platform it can happen on?
Yeah.
Right. And I think, too, we can hate too much on social media and demonize it too much because, like, let's not be hypocrites. We're doing a podcast that's going to be uploaded on social media. And we're hoping and expecting people to be blessed by it and to get something out of it. And otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
And there's so many people who are lost, who don't have examples in their life. And so they listen to an expert or a leader on a certain field or that genuinely helps them, genuinely ministers to them. And in some cases, like, saves them from suicide, like saves them from killing themselves. Like, I know I'm a testament of, like, you just searching out testimonies of people going through similar struggles as me on YouTube, on other social media outlets. And that helped get me through another day from killing myself, you know? And so, yes, it is so easy to demonize it, but there's also a lot of good that can come from social media as well. And that does come from social media as well. But going into another topic, let's give it to the producers now.
This video is going to be, it's going to be a clip, and it's kind of around, it's this guy talking about how Gen Z feels nothing. Let's get into it.
Gen Z doesn't feel anything. Our generation was born with the collapse of the Twin Towers. Our childhood was structured around the market crash of 2008, and we become accustomed to school during an internationally devastating viral pandemic. Tragedies surrounded us as long as we've been on this planet, so it's nearly impossible for us to be disturbed by literally anything. We resort to comedy in times of duress, and we compete for the attention that comes with a companion's misfortune. We've been numbed from the get-go, and that's why...
And it beautifully loops back, because I was tripping out on what a piece of art that video is.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
Like that kid is like dope. Like
every time I see those videos, I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
I watch it 10 times and I'm like, okay, where's the next point?
Oh yeah. Well, they're the meme makers, man. I mean, that's one thing I love about Gen Z. Their humor is next level.
Yeah.
Their humor is next level. Like, I can't even, like, I've never come across anything like it in my millennial life. And they're the ones doing the memes. They're the ones doing these clips. I appreciate that. But like basically he was saying that the past 20 years has been all this junk, insecurity, instability, and specifically we're talking about mainly America or Western third world countries, in which we've dealt with this, specifically America, in which Gen Z has dealt with this. And basically he's saying that that's why they don't feel anything. That's why they have this nihilism to life, you know? And so, that's basically what that was about.
I will speak on this. I catch myself being so numbed to so many things, like every single day. Like I'll even give this one example, and my mom talks about it all the time. She was like, I was concerned for you. So this is a little story. So when I was taking the bus to school, there was a guy behind my house who got murdered. Literally. Okay. I don't know what happened to him. We don't know. It was on the news. But I know this sounds crazy. I literally saw this guy's dead body. And
what?
No.
Wow.
And so you want to know what, so that we had to talk to this counselor at school. Crazy stuff, right? And I told the counselor, I was like, yeah, it's just like SVU. And she was like, no, it's not. And I'm like, yeah, it is. I see those all the time. She was like, no, but that was an actual person. I'm like, who? Like, so are the people in SVU.
Right.
Like, they're fake people. Like, they're acting dead. But it's like, in reality, I mean, that was like when I was 12, so it doesn't really affect me now. But it's like, if that's not a testament to how desensitized we are, like, it's like, oh, I see it on TV. Oh, I see it on TikTok. I see it all the time. It doesn't really matter because I've seen it so much that it's just like, okay, whatever.
Right.
Like, and I think about that. I'm like, Camille, like, what was going through your mind? But it was just like something I've seen before, like, whatever. And I'll catch myself, like, even with like my friends when they go through stuff, or even when I catch myself going through stuff, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever. Like, so many other people are going through this. Why does it matter that I'm going through this? But it's like, also at the same time, like, that's your own personal experience. Like, you need to care about that stuff. It's stuff that's actually important. And it's just like, we are super desensitized. And even on TikTok, like, time will move so fast because you're absorbing so much stuff. And it's like, you'll go from one person, like this is my TikTok For You page. Like, it'll go from like a military homecoming where I'm crying, and the next one I'm like dying laughing, and the next one is just like, this was stupid. Like, what is this? But that's all within 20 seconds.
Right.
And it's like, I go through every single emotion I could possibly go through in a minute. So it's like, you're eating all this consistently, always. And it's like, and you expect us to be able to emotionally regulate. You expect us to be able to communicate with each other. Like, no.
Wow.
Why would that be like something that we could possibly do? And this TikTok has been out since like, what, 2016? Yeah. Before that, there was Vine. Before that, there was Instagram. Consistently. So it's just been like, we absorb so much, and it's not a lot of output that we can put. So, like, that's like with your emotions, you're able to take in so much. You're taking so much. But where are you putting it out? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't have friends to talk to, who you can talk to, if you don't have good relationships, which majority of people, luckily, a lot of, like, for me, I have great relationships with my parents. I have awesome friends that I can talk to. But a lot of people, like we're talking, are lonely, and they don't have those relationships. So they're absorbing so much, but have nothing to put out.
Right.
So then all you do is just hold it in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you're like, okay, well, why does anything matter?
Right.
Like,
and to that point, when you do meet people like that, like, they trauma dump. Because they have no one to talk to. So they'll be like, when I was, when I was this age, like, I was raped, and then I was going to take my life. And
that's
then
a
my
good
dad,
point.
like, threw me, and they just go through all this stuff, and you have to just take it in because you're just like, hi, hello, good morning.
A lot of their identities, and it's even being promoted in our culture to be identified with your trauma. I mean, we're still putting out slave movies. Will Smith is still putting out slave. That's a whole nother. But it's like, really, do we really need another slave movie? Like, let's be more positive with the culture and stuff. But it's like, it's just this trauma dump, trauma, you know?
And it's like, people, when I talked to my therapist like a year ago, she was like, you're not your diagnosis. And I was like, that's true, because so many people just want to put their identity in something that they're willing to put it in a negative diagnosis in this like terminology and be like, this is what I am. This is who I am depressed. I am like, I do have anxiety. I am all this stuff. And so then they just live that like truth, so to speak. But it's like, no, that's isn't who you are. It's just something that affects you because of things you've gone through that you haven't properly processed. Because like you were saying, like, we take so much information in. What in that 20 seconds that we've watched all those videos do we have time to process? Because as soon as you get off TikTok, you're probably going to bed. You're going to do something else. So you don't have time to sit there and think about everything you're feeling. Like, you don't get that space.
No, that's crazy. I'm tripping off Camille's story still. No, but like,
Sorry.
Because he's not talking about, like, you know, somebody who's listening, like, you know, you ever get in trouble with the principal and then you just want to outburst and laugh for no reason?
Oh, yeah.
He's not talking about that kind of emotional displacement. He's talking about, like, exactly what you talked about, like, not really seeing the weight and the heaviness of reality. And so, I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking, like, obviously that's the point of, like, a trauma dumping movie, right? Like, they want you to see the weight and heaviness of that reality. War movies are crazy, right? And that's the thing. You see war movies, limbs being blown off and all that stuff. And it's almost like they're not trying to prepare us, but it's like because now your life, I mean, I'm trying to look at the good side of it. Your life hasn't been ruined.
Oh, no.
By that.
Totally not.
Some people will never get over seeing something like that.
And okay,
Is it a matter of exposure?
He was far.
Yeah, well, I think I think all the generations that are alive today have experienced trauma, horrible worldly events that have been horrible.
Right.
From World War II to Vietnam to the Middle Eastern wars. Gen X, boomers, millennials have all gone through trauma. But I feel like this Gen Z is different because with Gen X and boomers, there was still this optimism in the world, right? There was like still like this potential in the world that they saw. With where we're at now, it's just this weird situation where, you know, the economy is horrible. You very few can afford a house.
Yeah.
The American dream seems so unattainable to so many, because of a number of factors. And then you have COVID, and then you have a government cracking down in a lot of ways. There's less freedom in the world. There's less prosperity, at least in the third world, in our American culture. And there is this trauma culture that's we're constantly being fed. So I think that kind of factors into it too. Yeah.
No, yeah. I think in the sense, like, for our generation, we never were taught how to emotionally regulate. So that is the reason why the other generations before us, they were able to talk to each other. They were able to communicate with each other. They were all going through similar experiences, and it was this togetherness. We're all feel as though like we're all separated from one another.
Our algorithm
so it's
is
like
different.
it's that we're not able to actually be together, and we literally were not together for 2 years straight.
Right.
2 years straight, we were literally not together. So in that sense, we're already separated from each other. And then on top of that, parents are getting divorced more. There's not so much like that kinesthetic play, sorry, big words, but like the kinesthetic play that the kids need and that we also like adults still need it type of situation. There's a lack of that. So we're not able to like go through our trauma together. Because like even when I like talk to my parents or I've talked to my grandparents, like, how did you experience that? Well, I knew everyone else was experiencing it, so it made me feel good. But it's like, no, we know other people are experiencing it, but mine is what matters. Mine is what matters. It's like this me type of situation rather than being like, no, like we're all going through this together. And the first time I've ever seen that like a generation go through something together was a pandemic. But even in that, we didn't like.
We were separated.
We were separated.
Yeah.
We didn't actually get to go through it together. So it's in everything where it's been like, oh, we can go through this together. It's the shared.
We couldn't even see our dying grandparents in the hospital.
You were. And how are you supposed to grieve over that? How are you supposed to like experience that if you were literally not allowed to be with people? You know what I mean? So it's like, it makes sense why it literally makes sense to me. Like when I think about it, and I like, for me, like teaching in classrooms and seeing kids, like, I'm like, you guys are like, not even being rude. You guys are so messed up and it's not your fault. It is totally not your fault. It's the fact that you were online for 2 years. Majority of your parents like have to both work consistently, like from 9 to 5, if not on the weekend. They're not having that time together. Like parents can't afford things that you may want. Everything is so expensive. And you're like, why are these kids so weird? Like literally like here, I'm like, these kids are awesome. When I started teaching in classrooms and I like had to teach and I was like, these kids are weirdos. Like they're so weird. But I'm also like, I imagine teachers when they were teaching me, they're like, that girl was a weirdo, you know, like whatever. But like.
Yeah, she's seen a dead body and didn't think anything of it.
He wasn't that close, I promise.
Who do you teach? What age group?
Well, I was teaching last semester. I taught 5th grade and 2nd grade. And so 5th graders, they were on the same trends. Their For You page looked exactly like mine. And I was like,
that part.
Why do you know what I'm like?
Right.
Why are we, I'm 19 years old. Why are you guys seeing what I'm seeing? Like, that shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
allowed. And like, if you like, these kids are going to be so desensitized. They are going to be so like sexualized. They are going to have so many things in their mind that they have been seeing since they were 5 years old.
Right.
So by the time they get to 18, their whole mindset's going to be just jumbled and mumbled together.
Yeah.
And like, you're like, yeah, no wonder they don't know how to talk to people.
Yeah.
No wonder they don't know how to communicate with each other. No wonder they're failing school. Like, all these things, but like from top to bottom, you're like, it makes sense. Like, and it's like, what can we do about it? Really nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
delete the internet. Okay, no.
Yeah, right.
Social
Like
media cleanse
some
for 2 weeks.
EMF
That was-
has
yeah, I just did
occurred
that.
wipes out all electronics,
Like-
makes it start from scratch.
Yeah, because even the last conversation, I was like, I really admire this about Gen X and Boomers is that they use I don't know the statistics on it, but I know a few Boomers who've like literally got on a dating app and have been married for like as soon as like eHarmony launched when it did like
Yeah, my
20
mother-in-law did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have successful relationships and build families from these dating apps. When look at Tinder, it's like the whole connotation is one night stand.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, how wild is it that even like you said, they could see the good in it and have good outcomes when something crazy happens because they have that sense of unity or that sense of emotional like equilibrium. It's just wild to think about because there's, I was talking to this guy and I didn't know. He's like, yeah, I met my wife online. She lived in Peru. And, we've been married for 20 plus years now. And I'm like, dude, like you were on the cutting edge of dating apps because you did it successfully, but not everybody does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's just wild. It makes sense.
Yeah, and I could really feel the apathy in, and another thing that stood out in the video is kind of their ability. It's like, okay, I'm not gonna curse. I'll just use the they don't give a F in a lot of ways. Like there's an apathy, but that translates into like some crazy humor, you know, you know, and so it's like this it's they have this ability, like the Joker was such a good image because it's kind of like this anarchist, like who cares, the world's going to, whether you believe the narrative that the climate is going to be destroyed in the next 10 years, or whether you don't believe that, but you still see the government acting crazy and society acting crazy. It's like there's no stability anymore.
Yeah.
There's no way to predict the future. You used to be able to predict the future. You used to be able to depend on a 401k, depend on a retirement, depend on a pension. Like Gen Z doesn't have that. Like Adam said last week, they're going to go through like at least 20 jobs, 20 to 40 jobs throughout their life.
Yeah,
to me, that's a sign of instability.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's crazy. Let's have them shoot us another video. I think that may connect.
All right, this next video is just comparing the two generations, kind of between millennials and Gen Z, and how they think based around facts and stuff like that. So let's get into this.
Why do millennials have this mentality and like the way that we kind of speak is like an I think, I think, blah, blah. It's very I think, but then the Gen Zers come through and they're like, this is what it is. And they are not like second guessing, and there's no self-doubt in the way that they communicate their wants and the things that they're doing and like their work. Whereas we have like a very almost like self-deprecating form of communication. Yeah. Why is that?
We're kind of a filler generation in between like Gen X and Gen Z are very similar. Then Gen Z is now raised by us who are, like so wishy-washy, and they're like, well, I can say whatever I want then because you're not going to say anything back to me. And,
scary.
And I think with Gen Z specifically too, is they grew up with social media from day one. You had always had access to the internet and always had access to social media to think you know everything, and that's what creates their confidence. It's like, no, I know this because I watched a YouTube video on it.
And they had Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the I think and I know, is that just like a universal thing because they're young? All young people think they know everything. They know it all, and they haven't lived life enough to, humble them? Or is that the product of their generation, that they genuinely think they know everything, like they don't?
I think that's what it is, that they think they know everything. Because my sister, she's 12, And like she'll talk back to my mom, and I'm like, girl, I would have been slapped silly if I did that, but she can get away with whatever she wants. My mom tells her don't do that, she does it. There's no repercussion. So it's like she knows that she can do this stuff because there's nobody to like push back on what she's trying. So she just tests the limits. She tests the limits all the time. She tells my mom like stuff to her face, and that I would never dream of telling her because I know I would not be alive right now if I did that. And she's fine, and she knows it. And she'll talk to like other adults. Like there's no level of respect. There's nothing. There's no like, oh, you know, you're my elder. Like that's not a thing.
Yeah.
At least in the younger spectrum of the Gen Z generation, there's like no level of respect. And I think that's because of COVID. There's a lot of kids. Like they had nobody to teach them that. And in a classroom setting, at least you learned like, okay, this person is above me. There's authorities.
Respect.
There's this level of hierarchy. That's who I have to respect. They didn't get that because everything was online. Like what were teachers going to do? Tell them to unmute themselves? Like they can stay
leave
muted if they want.
the classroom if you want, whenever you want.
I used to sleep on my economy class and online.
You and me both, girl. You
Like,
and me both.
My ears were trained to know when he was ready to turn it off or to like leave, even though I was sleeping. Subconsciously, like I knew when I had to leave the class, so I looked like I was paying attention. Like I could hear my name and I would know what he was talking about, even though I was asleep. So I'm like, there's these things that other generations didn't go through. Like who in your age or your age, like can do that, you know?
Right.
Just subconsciously be able to be programmed into these like sub-level actions to, you know, like that's crazy to me.
Yeah, and I noticed too with Gen Z is that which I appreciate about Gen Z, there's a level of authenticity that they wear their emotions and their thoughts on their sleeves. There's not a lot of filter that like you said, not a lot of filter that goes on. But that's good because I'd rather interact with somebody that I know what they're thinking than somebody that's gonna like be a faker and just kind of trick me or deceive me and say something to my face just to make me feel good and then talk about me behind my back or something else. So I appreciate the authenticity of Gen Z. Do you guys see that, or is that does that make sense? Or like they'll just
there's definitely authenticity,
like even the way they sign off of emails, it's like
Oh yeah. Just like, okay, bye. Like,
right.
Yeah, right. Like our generation, it's like sincerely
yours,
you know,
truly.
or you know,
Yours truly.
yeah.
I think it's borderline, like I was saying, like testing the limits of what you can and can't get away with. Because it's like part of it is authenticity, but if you meet a lot of Gen Z people, like the facade that they put up, like they can create an entire personality off of these people they've seen on social media. And these personas, like there's this trend going around talking about like your 2022 eras, which I don't know how many years is in an era. I would assume it's a long time, but they can have like but
I don't know what an era is, so I'm like,
it just goes to my point. Like people are like, oh, this was my era, and they just compartmentalize these events that have happened in their life and put it into this short title and be like, when I was working at this place or when I was an entrepreneur. And so they just don't, like, they test the limits is what I think. I think it's borderline authenticity, borderline testing limits of what they can and can't get away with. That's what I've noticed for sure.
Okay. And I hate, like, because I'm trying to process what I'm about to say, which is because I love Gen Z and I love the confidence, but because I talk to so many, especially middle schoolers, but high schoolers in general, I'm always just talking to younger people. And like when you talk and have full conversation about that, you kind of realize, and that's what's interesting because the video is talking about the confidence they have. But the confidence, like, and this is just a life thing anyways, we all run into it. Our confidence doesn't match our claim all the time. Like, so like I've talked to like a 7th grader. Hey, what do you like to do? I'm a music producer. You know, and you're like, oh wow, like that's dope, man. Like, show me something you produce.
Let me listen. Let me in, man.
Yeah, and you're like, wow, like, you know, it's bad, you know, or like whatever. And it's not because obviously you like to be encouraging stuff. So yeah, keep doing it. You're gonna get better. But the claim of like, because I think what they're addressing is all the new experts around. Yeah. And I hate to sound like, because I'm only 26, but like you see like a 17-year-old and they're like, I'm a photographer, which is dope. Keep being a photographer, keep trying, but you're not a good photographer. Like, you're not a professional photographer, but the confidence will make them sound like that. And I'm not sure that's what they mean, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the big gap between the confidence, is it like ignorance? Is it
a bad thing though? Because there is
Yeah.
a certain segment of our culture that has always preached that to us.
right?
The speak it into existence. There's
Fake
even
it till you
Yeah,
make
yeah,
it
yeah.
there's
type of
even a
situation.
subset of Christianity that teaches that, like,
Yeah.
speak things as though they're not, as if they are.
Yeah,
It's that mindset of no matter what, I'm going to say I'm the greatest and I'm the best, and even
Yeah.
if I'm not, I'm going to say it because I'll
Yeah.
speak it into existence.
But this was crazy, like growing up wanting to be the millennials in my life, looking up to them all the time. I noticed that they're very critical. And so I grew up, I'm really critical on things. And so I want to be good at something because I'm bad at it, not because I'm already good at it. When I become really good at something, the likelihood of me wanting to keep that up is actually dropped. That's just me personally. Like for video games, if I like reach God status skills, I'm like bored of it. Or if I 100% achieve a
Right.
game, I'm done.
Yeah.
Right? I'm over it. So it's like that. If you are radically confident about something that you're not good at, are you gonna ever be good because you think you're already good, right? That's it's not like it's not I'm not bashing anybody or anything, but it's not bad. But my fear is like for the younger person, that like, oh, I'm good, I'm a photographer, so you don't look up dope other photographers because you think you're the dope photographer people are looking at, or you're not, so it's that hunger that I think is missing, just because it's like people they're not willing to be bad at something first. They just think like, oh, I come to this naturally, so I'm good at it because boom, or whatever it is, videography, video games, sports. They like, students don't want to play basketball, and I ask them, why don't you play this sport? Because I suck at it. Of course you suck at it. You're a sixth
You
grader.
played it once in your life.
Right? Like, so, but they're like, no, I don't play it because I'm not good. So that's kind of when the confidence happens because somebody found something they like to do.
Yeah.
So, it's just interesting. I don't know
it's
where
a good
that
thought.
conversation goes, but I think that's where the confidence comes from. They've actually found something they're passionate about. So they're saying, that's I grew up watching critical millennials criticize themselves, criticize others, criticize work, react to stuff like reaction videos. Like a lot of reactors are millennials who will react about, and like, being a musician, they tear something apart.
Okay.
Here's why this song sucks. Here's why that movie sucks. And so that's just like an interesting, that's the contrast that I noticed too, that I could affirm that video is like, millennials are very critical, and it comes off as they lack confidence when they're critical on themselves. I didn't like that. I didn't like my performance there, or I didn't like how I did that, And
Yeah.
so-
Yeah. And I understand what you're saying. And I think the internet, being the internet generation, the first fully integrated internet generation, plays a huge factor because in a sense, like, knowledge has grown tremendously. It's at the tap of your fingertip. Previous generations were not able to Google. Previous generations were basically told by two or three news outlets what the truth is. What you go to school, you learn in a textbook what history is from one textbook. So it was all like they all had the same material. They were all reading from. They were all learning from NBC News Tonight. Whereas now it's knowledge is so abundant. They Google, and so there is a sense with that you can feel like you do know everything.
Yeah.
And so
I think the one thing that came to mind was like we have this God complex, and I think that comes from not being a generation stemmed in Christianity and like being taught for so long that it's like there's so many different choices that you can have. Choose one that fits best for you, that you like the most. Not like, yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, like we face trials. But yes, at the same time, like I know when I go through stuff that like Jesus is going to be there for me. That the Lord, like I will persevere because I have Jesus on my side. And it's like, I know that. And that's what stops me from being like, I can do it all by myself. I have confidence. And yes, there's plenty of things that I feel fully confident. I'm like, you can ask me about it. I'll be able to tell you. But I also am never going to stop learning. Once people feel like they've reached a limit of like, I got it, they're not going to learn anymore. I always want to be a learner. I always want to learn more. And I always want to grow more. But that becomes like, that's because Jesus wants me to grow more. He wants me to learn more. He wants to be able to speak about more things, have more knowledge. Knowledge is power. But it's like, I'm confident in this. I don't need to be confident in anything else. Where are you getting that from? Who told you that?
Right.
Who's lying to you? You need to get them out your life because like, that needs to not happen. That's not fair to you to have that like same like that confidence, like, oh, I'm without me there's nothing, like I know everything, I'm perfect. Like, no, you're not perfect. You're gonna fail all the time, you're gonna mess up, and people need to say that more. It's like, even I catch myself in school, like my professors, they make sure to give you, if they're giving you critiques, they'll give you 5 good things, 1 bad thing. I probably did 7 bad things and 1 good thing, but you're just telling me I'm doing good. But I'm like, no, critique me. Tell me what I'm doing wrong, because I can't actually grow if you're telling me that I'm doing perfect. And like, there's all these stupid like grading systems where it's like, I'm not giving you an A, I'm going to give you complete. I'm not giving you a B, I'm going to give you partially competent. No, an A means you did 100%. A B means you did, B. C means you did average, and F means you failed, type of situation. And it's like, those structures were there for a reason, but you guys are changing it into this thing where it's like, let me just make you feel confident. Right. We've been boosted up our whole lives telling us that we're these awesome creatures and we're so perfect, but it's like, no, we need to be told, like, we fail. We are bad sometimes. We make mistakes. And it's like, no one wants to hear. I mean, yes, does it suck when someone's like, no, you're really bad at that? Like, okay, cool, thanks. Right. Awesome. But it's like, also, like, you need to hear that. You can't grow unless...
They want to be coddled. They want their safe spaces, right?
Yeah. It's like, you need to step outside your safe zone. And that's something that, like, you have to grow up. You have to learn how to grow up. But no one's willing to grow up. Everyone wants their comfort zone, which, I love my comfort zone. But also, like... we talk about it all the time. Like, I do things that are weird. Like, I started line dancing, and now I go line dancing every week. That is so funny. And I love it, and it was really awkward. I'm like, I grew up in Rancho Cucamonga. Like, why am I line dancing? But it's still so fun. I did something that I would never think I would possibly do because I was like, this is boring. I don't like just going to Victoria Gardens. Like, let me do something fun. So it's like, I want to grow. I want to learn more. Yeah, now I can do 20 line dances. Couldn't do that before, but I had to get outside my comfort zone. Someone had to look at me and be like, you're doing that wrong. Let me teach you. Oh, that's dope. And I had to, like, learn that. But no one's willing to get outside their comfort zone. I'll catch my friends doing that. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, get off the wall, bro. Like, come on, let's go. Like, let's do fun stuff. But people aren't willing to, like, not be confident in what they're doing. And that's the problem. Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful thing to, like, marvel at the young people, like, achieving something. Yeah. Like, that's dope. Like, I have a 1-year-old. He claps, and we all clap. Yeah. He just clap. Because that's amazing for a 1-year-old or for a 10-month-old or, so it's interesting, like, how then does the older generation learn how to help younger people level up? Because they do one extreme or the other. They either coddle you and like, that's an amazing beat, son. 10 years later, the same quality beat, this music producer kid, God forbid, right? Same quality beat from 10 years ago because he's just been told he's dope.
You're doing great now.
Or you're amazing. Yeah. So that's a hard balance.
And I want to add something to that because it's like the Gen X and the Boomers hate on Gen Z because of their safe spaces, because they're so sensitive, because they can. But it's like, but who fed into that?
Exactly.
It's your generation. Your generations wrote those textbooks. Your generation are the teachers, are the principals, are the superintendents. So, dude, like, take the log out of your own eye before you take the speck out of somebody else's eye. Yeah. But I also want to go back to the God complex, because I thought that was such a great point, because Gen Z now more than is having this whole, like, you can be the god of your own world. Yeah. So if you were born a woman or a girl, you can be a boy. If you were born a boy, you can be a girl. And to me, that goes back to what you just said, this God complex. And like that used to be just basic knowledge, like life 101, that you're not God. Yeah. And like, you were born a boy, you can't be a girl. Like there's a great Mr. Rogers clip going around. He's like boys are boys, girls are girls. But it's hilarious because that used to be like just basic knowledge, and now we're having to like defend it. Now we're having to teach that boys have boy parts and girls have girl parts. But like my daughter is an 11-year-old, so she's is that Gen Z 11?
I don't think
okay,
so.
Maybe not, but still there's some relation here because I can speak to this point. Like, she brought up the conversation of being a transgender because she ran into somebody, a friend who or an acquaintance that sparked the conversation, and so she talk to me about that. And Dad, what do you think? If a girl wants to be a boy, do you think that they should be able to if it makes them happy and blah, blah, blah. And we had a long discussion. Most of it was me questioning her rather than me telling her, because I think young people learn best when they're forced to think for themselves, as opposed to just teaching them. I mean, you want to teach them obviously at the end of the day, but you know what I mean. But so I asked questions, and so one of the questions is it's so basic, but it's like so obvious. It's like what if me, like I spoke for myself. I said, I love the 1950s. Something about the 1950s, the culture, the music, a lot of things. The bad things, they're bad things. I don't appreciate that. But there are some good things of the 1950s that I like. And I've always thought to myself, man, I wish God would have. But I'm not God. Like, God put me in this generation. It's not a generation I would have chosen. But I have no choice in that. And so I have to learn to live with it. I have to learn to accept my life the way God designed my life to be. And, rather than fighting against and raising my hands to the heavens and saying, you made a mistake, I have to learn contentment. Yeah. I have to learn peace, in who I am, in God's purpose for me, in humility, and accepting God, God's design and God's predestination of my life. So that was one of the examples that I gave her. But, it's crazy how we have this God complex now. We think we can just be God and just be masters of our own world. And it always ends in misery. It always ends in pain. Yep. 70 some percent, 90% of transgenders end up committing suicide within like 5 years of having the operation. And so, the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they try to seek fulfillment in these type of things. So I've talked to a person once who was transgender, and they told me about their entire life and everything that happened. And at least for my experience personally, I feel like they try to run away from something that happened to them. And so they think if they live the life of a different person, if they become a different person, if they can escape that in a sense, that it doesn't apply to them, that trauma will not affect them anymore. So to put it into terms of being transgender, if something happened to this person and they're it's because I'm a girl, they're well, what if I become a boy? That'll change what happened. That'll make me feel better because I'm no longer the person that happened to. They attach a different identity to themselves, and they're that person isn't me. They kind of hop out of their body and that's not me. That's me. I'm a boy. I see them. I see the way they live. I want to live like that. I don't want to live like that. I don't like the trauma that happened to that person. So I'm going to become like that person. Mm-hmm. And it's just so easily accessible to see other people. Mm-hmm. There's a transgender person in the White House, I think. And so it's these younger kids are looking up to people like this that, feel that they need to change themselves. And they're well, they're happy now. They're doing all these big things. So what if I do the same thing? What if I try to change who I am, who I was, what happened to me because I'm not content with how my life is going? You can't just escape what's happened. You have to learn to overcome that, or you're just going to be in misery no matter
So we're going to continue this conversation, but there's a video that you sent that connects with this that I want us to show.
So on October 28th, Good Morning Norway aired an interview with Jorand Victoria Alme, 53-year-old able-bodied male who now identifies as a disabled woman. And in the interview, he stated that he had always wished that he had been born a woman who was paralyzed from the waist down. Despite having no physical handicaps, he currently utilizes a wheelchair almost all the time. So,
we now live in a world where an able-bodied man can identify as a woman and as disabled. I'm wondering when we're going to wake up as a society and call this out, because now anyone can identify as disabled. I'm sure this is going to stir up all sorts of controversy.
Yeah, it's wild, because I know people that will say Candace Owens is radicalizing the argument that most the LGBT community doesn't agree with that person, right? And that's probably safe to say that most of the LGBTQIA plus community doesn't agree with that. Mm-hmm. But I always talk to people, because a lot of my friends that I went to high school with went to UC Santa Cruz or UC Berkeley, and they've went in and came out like radical liberal, which whether you're liberal or not. But a big a way of thinking is that whole realm of identity and looking at it retrospectively. I was born this way and all that. So I was talking to somebody who's a psychologist. She was telling me like the DSM-5 and stuff, that they affirm this way of thinking, of that like it's a revelation that you've been born that way or you've been changed. The concern is that I always argue and get in debates with my old friends from high school or family members, is that it's scary because that's really what it leads to. Is that you can, so where there's no governing source of if you're right or wrong. So they can't say you're not allowed to do that or not allowed to be a male if you're a female, because that is your reality that you get to choose. So that's scary because like it's like, well, what about when you commit a crime and
you can use it to your advantage?
Yeah, when you commit a crime and say that was when I was that person, but I'm not that person anymore.
Exactly.
How do you convict? And they go, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, well, it's happening at a very small level.
Or you say you're
already.
A woman in order not to be in jail with men and have a lighter experience.
So it's scary, and I don't want to be like very like bashing on it. I just really have a problem understanding it because a lot of it doesn't make sense to me.
You're taking it to its logical ends.
Yes.
Is what we're talking about here, and it really is taking it to its logical ends, right? Because I mean, there was even a story of a classroom that they were trying to, because they do all these pronouns now. They want to honor what's your pronoun? They, them, he, her, whatever. And the girl identified as a cat. And so I don't know if this was true or not, but it was making its round that, she asked to have a litter box put in the classroom in order to go.
Wow.
That's how she or he wanted to go to the bathroom. But like that's a crazy illustration. But it's taking this idea to its logical ends. But here's the thing: if I wasn't a Christian, and if I was just like, if I wasn't a Christian, if I had no values, I would do stuff like that. I would take advantage of the system.
Yeah.
Right. So I would pretend I had a disability in order to get front row parking, not have to deal with parking spots for the rest of my life. I would pretend I was a woman and commit a crime and go to a woman's prison. I would,
Wow.
I would do that. I'm just saying, like if I had no values in life, if I didn't believe in God, if I was an atheist, I would use the system to my advantage. 100%.
I was tempted to do that yesterday at Disneyland because it's the end of the night. We celebrated Valor's first birthday. So it's like 8:00 at this point, and we want to do the animation studio situation. But we don't want to separate because in Disneyland, you have to do ride swapping and all that stuff with the babies. So I tell the lady, like, is there any way we could bring him in a stroller in the room? And she said, yeah, the only way you can do that is if you go to guest services, they'll give you a red tag that'll allow you to get in this room with the stroller. I go, oh, that's perfect. I walk over to guest services with Valor, and he's sleeping in his stroller. And, I do what the lady said. Hey, they told me to walk over here. You give me a red tag. I could take the stroller into the area where everyone's at so we don't have to do a ride swap situation. He goes, oh, no, like, we don't just give them out. You have to have a reason, like a medical reason or a handicap thing. And in that moment, and I'm with my brother-in-law, and I'm like, so I literally test the waters, and I asked the guy, so I could tell you that he has a really extreme headache and we don't want him in the cold. And then he's like, let me talk to my supervisor. and then he comes back and he's like, that won't work. And I go, but I could tell you like a certain medical condition. And he's like, I can't give you the list because you're going to use it. So I was just tempted. I'm just sharing that. I was tempted to do that. And I was willing, and I didn't do it, but I was willing, almost willing to lie just so I can get what I want out of a situation. And that just happened last night.
Oh,
and this is Disneyland. Like,
right.
Real.
They should accept that kind of. No, I'm just kidding. But that's wild. So, like you said, I agree with that because I have that.
Yeah.
That's that little bone in my body. That's whatever I can do to get what I want, I'll do.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was a temptation. I didn't do it. And I literally, I'm not making this up. I tell the guy, you're the right guy for the job. Because I couldn't get over on him. I was just asking him questions. You're the right guy for the job, man. Keep doing what you do. And I walked out, and my brother-in-law was like, bro, what are you doing? You should have played him. You should have said he had this condition. And I'm like, nah, bro, we could have, but I didn't want to. It's just funny that you say that because
Well, it's crazy because they used to be called mental illnesses, and they used to be, now they're just praised and affirmed, but they used to be called, there's this condition, it's, we talk about body dysmorphia. This is the reasoning behind a lot of sex change operations, body dysmorphia. Well, there's body dysmorphia of people who feel like they need to be an amputee. Like they have this dysmorphia, like I should not have my right leg.
Wow.
I should not have my right leg. And so what they'll do is they create a strap that like bends their right leg, and every morning they'll put this strap on, and to make it feel like in their head that they're an amputee.
Now the question I have is like, where is this stuff coming from? Like nobody.
That's what I'm saying.
That,
it
right?
used to be called a mental illness.
Yeah.
Like nobody
right?
talks about like.
But now
this
it's
is
just
why.
like, and you see these on TLC programs and stuff. These people who think that they're babies, they're 40-year-old babies that live in
That's
cribs.
So disturbing.
In diapers. And so yeah, it's a crazy time to be alive, and people are definitely taking advantage of the current norms.
Yeah.
And you have these cases in female prisons where you have a transgender who's raping the women in these facilities, totally taking advantage of the current cultural climate. So it's gonna, that's the logical end to all of this. It's going to be abused. You can't examine the person's heart. You're not gonna know for certain whether they're just faking it, or not.
Dude, and that's why because the family I talk to that educates me on all the verbiage and all the way of thinking about this. I'm not the first person to ever think of this. I heard somebody say this, and I agree with it. That I just think that the LGBTQ community just needs to have a governing system and just probably become their own religion. That's honestly, and not because I just hate bashing it and letting a radical example represent them if it's misrepresenting them, right? Like we talked about gays against grooming and all that stuff that rise up and say, hey, most of the community doesn't agree with that, but they don't want that because you need a governing aspect to tell somebody they're wrong. You can't tell somebody they're wrong. So they look at that and say, that's ridiculous. But if I'm further on the spectrum away from that, I'm thinking you're ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you can't empathize with me there. And that's why I just don't understand it. So come up with a governing source so I could just understand it better. Because it's confusing as heck.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say like something that I've realized is like throughout taking like biology classes and anthropology classes and all these things where I'm going to a very, very liberal university, to say the least. And hearing what my professors are saying and knowing my convictions and knowing truth. I'm like, I sit there and I know like we had talked about it like a couple podcasts ago, just like people go into college and they're just kind of like, don't really know what's going on. And you can get so influenced. And I'm so grateful for the fact that I like have my relationship with Jesus and I've gone to church my whole life and I have so many mentors around me that I can ask questions to where I'm like, this would automatically sway me if I didn't know truth.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. People are hearing things like this and they're like, okay, yeah, it doesn't really make sense, but like it works. So I'll agree with it. But it's like, there's no truth behind it. And what you're saying in the sense like having like their own governing system in an extent, it's just like, there's no one really controlling it, and it just seems like everyone's lying at this point. Like, not saying those who identify as LGBTQ, like, they are lying, like, whatever, like, you do you, I don't know, whatever. That's a conversation for its own, but I'm saying, like, this, to this extent, this is just, like, so far off. It's like, I know people who do identify as that would probably think that's, like, that's stupid, like what you're saying. But it's, like, no one's holding them accountable. There's no accountability in the own, like, identification system, like, there's no one holding them accountable, and the government can't hold them accountable because the government's like seen as homophobic, transphobic, all these things. And it's like, but where's the accountability? We can't hold humans accountable if there's no governing factor over us. And it's like, where are you getting your ideals from? I get my ideals from the Bible. You can hold me accountable from what the Bible says.
Right.
Yeah.
But what are you holding yourself accountable to? What are you basing this on? There's no basis. It's just like, okay, you do whatever you want. And how is that fair for anybody? How is there any rules? How is there any, you can, like you're saying, you can lie, you can get away with whatever you want because there's nothing holding you accountable to it.
And a big issue right now that the LGBTQ community and everyone I know affiliated with the community accepts is gender fluidity. That you can consistently change.
Yeah.
So that's another issue. And so they're not far off. And I talk to people like, so I'm not like, and La La Land. None of us are. And that's why I don't like when people watch the podcast and I read the comments, they say, cite your sources. Like we talk to hundreds of people.
Right. We live in the real world.
Yeah. We all.
I'm
right.
I go to school. I have jobs.
Yeah.
I do things like we're real people.
We have
We're
gay,
living life.
We have
don't just
gay
sit here-
friends.
Yeah.
We have gay family members.
Yes.
We have people in a lot of these venues. You're
For sure.
you're part of your job is an evangelist. For a big part of youth ministry is to be an evangelist. You got to go to them. They're not going to come to you. You got to go to their high schools. You got to go to their games. You got to participate in their life.
And that's what we do. We're in I just talked to somebody, we're in like Rancho Cucamonga High School every Friday. Etowanda High School every Friday.
How many people show up to that?
Rancho has 300 plus 300 plus students come every Friday for their lunch just to come and hear conversations about Jesus. Who is this guy? What is going on here?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are not Christian. A lot of the students that come, you know this, Camille, because you went to Rancho.
I went to Rancho, and when they first started I would go in and I'd be like,
you ain't Christian.
I'm like, you're here for the free pizza. The pizza's what gets you in.
Right.
And then you hear the conversation. And then what would happen, and I've told them this, is like I would go to school and people would ask me questions because they knew I was affiliated in the same way. Who's holding me accountable?
Right.
My church is holding me accountable. Type of situation. You can ask me questions and I'll answer them because you're going into this with like questions. You go in for the free pizza and someone says like, it's not radical, but it's like, something you've never heard before, something is new to you. And you're like, well, I know this person is affiliated with this. Let me ask them questions. Where are they getting their answers from? I'm getting my answers from the Bible. I'm getting answers from like my relationship with Jesus. We can't do that with other people.
Yeah,
you can't have that same accountability type of situation. But yes, tons of people go, and like majority of the people that go in there are not Christian and come out and they do ask questions and they want to like know more. And that's all that you can do.
And then that's why I just say that, because I just can't stand cite your sources. Why are you guys pulling anecdotes out of thin air? And it's like, we're living life in a community, talking to people all the time. We don't just sit here in this room. It's crazy. So it's wild.
Yeah. What else you guys got for us?
This next one's going to be about how, what are the exact reasons why some people would say that Gen Z doesn't desire to work?
Here's the real reason why Gen Z doesn't want to work. Kids these days, they don't want a hard days of work at all. They just want to quit their jobs and be on social media all day long. Yeah, it's actually a lot more complicated than that. We want to quit because we're being taken advantage of, put in huge amounts of debt, and not paid properly. See, because while you were working in the 80s, your salary could actually afford you a decent lifestyle, but let me just show you the numbers. Since 1970, home prices have increased by 1,608%. If we compare minimum wages from then and now, in 2022, minimum wage is 40% lower than what it should be compared to 1970. But anyways, the same home that cost you $100,000 in 1970 costs you $710,000 now. All the while, wages have remained stagnant. Okay, sure, but that's just the way things are now. We had struggles too. Live with it. Yeah, kind of hard to live with it when college has increased by 2,000%. Tuition used to be $1,700 in 1970. And in 2020, it's about $38,000 a year. Follow for more.
Imagine paying that much for college.
That is the Gen Z diplomat right
literally
there.
was having
oh my God.
that struggle. Recently, I had to apply by like yesterday for college, and I was like, I'm just not going to apply because I don't want to put myself in that, like lose an arm and a leg and then my other leg just to go to school to learn what I'm already working in. Like, why am I going to put myself in that situation? I've been blessed that I can already work in the career that I'm working towards, and I haven't even finished school yet. A lot of people can't say the same. So they're like, I have to put myself through UCLA, all these other schools that it's like $100,000 per semester. They're like, I have to do this. And then at the end of the day, the job they get doesn't pay back the debts they're in. So luckily, I was able to find a school that's like within reasonable amount of debt that I'm willing to pay off, that I'm going to pay off before I die type of thing. And I can still, work and do everything else. But I'm like, that's true. Like, it's not that Gen Z doesn't want to work, is that the standards and the wages and all that stuff is not good. Like 2 years ago, I got my second job and I was working at the Habit, and it was so underemployed that I was working double shifts 7 days a week, and I wouldn't even see my family. It got to the point where they literally had to text me and they were like, we don't see you anymore. Like, you missed your sister's birthday because you're working. And that's what kind of like changed it for me when I was like, I'm a workaholic. Like, I'm working everybody else's jobs. Like, I'm doing other people's roles just because they're telling me I'm good. And so I stopped settling for that. And it wasn't because I didn't want to work. It was because I didn't want to be taken advantage of. So it's not that Gen Z doesn't want to work. It's that we know our worth in the workplace because we've seen our family like have that happen to them. I've seen my mom do graveyard shifts. I've had to take care of my sisters because of it. I don't want to be that same parent. I literally have said this. I want to be a present mom. I don't want to be a mom that doesn't go to the games. That isn't there for my family, because I lived that life and I had to step up and be a mom for my sisters. And I'm like, that's not healthy for anyone in the situation. So why am I going to put myself in a position, in a career, in a job, in a school that's going to put me in a spot where I have no choice but to be that person, you know? Like, and they don't see that. Like, not you guys. I'm saying, like, in general, the people that argue this don't see that component of it. It's like, we've lived this and we've seen you guys go through those same trials. We don't want to live that. Like, we're trying to beat the system, essentially.
No, that's I'm shook, because connecting what you just said with what she's saying, you know, we go to all these youth conferences all the time or even things for youth workers, and there's that rhetoric is out there. Older people are saying that about Gen Z. They don't want to work. But there's this awesome organization called Barna. They do tons of statistics, and that is actually like one of the biggest definers of Gen Z is that it's not that they don't want to work. It's that they're not motivated by money.
That's so true.
And so that's what I was going to ask you. Do you feel like it's not because no one could say you don't want to work. You just said you work double shifts 7 days a week. You want to work because you have to function in society. You probably have a car payment or bills or whatever. Do you feel like that's more it? What are you most motivated by? Is it money? Is it like...
Well, it used to be like things, right? It was like to get your house, to get that car, to get that boat, to get that, whatever. That's why that would motivate previous generations to work. There was the potential for reward with the risk of the hours put into work. It kind of lined up. It was worth it to them. And part of what she's saying is the reward is not worth it anymore because my dollar can't buy what it used to.
Totally.
My dollar can't buy what it used to, what it used to buy. Like she said, like, yes, like with the house prices and today's prices, yes, you have to factor in inflation. But even with that, inflation hasn't caught up.
The minimum wage nationally is $7, and before, during whatever time, because I had seen that video, so I did my own little research, and the minimum wage was like $4 when she was like the original time. It's only gained $3 national. Like, how is that and of course California we're $15, but still. I was working minimum wage, and I still am. I don't know, whatever. Sorry. I'm like, you literally cannot buy things. Like,
No.
I'm like, I don't know how anyone's doing this.
All your money goes to your bills, and then you're like, all right, 2
Sounds
weeks I'll get paid
good.
again.
you
Happens
can't
again.
buy things that matter.
No.
Like, you could buy hot Cheetos. You can buy a meal at
Go to
McDonald's.
Chick-fil-A.
And it's so tough. That is like, I always vent to like the older guys or anybody that will listen about the struggle of trying to buy a house in this day and age as a young person building a family. And I'm always telling my family like that need to step up and help watch my son and help us not. I don't want to pay babysitters. I want you to babysit. I don't want to, because we can't build. The irony is, she's laughing because she's gonna be watching Valor now. So I just hired. We just hired her as a babysitter.
I'm the babysitter, guys.
But I'd love.
And you have to work 2 jobs now to pay for your babysitter.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Working Uber. You work Uber, right?
Lyft. Yeah, I drive for Lyft.
Lyft,
so
and you're a pastor here full time.
Wild, and it's like
That's why I say Gen Z is the hardest generation ever existed. No,
but we always talk about why did boomers make us go to college when they didn't, and they bought houses. They have amazing 401ks.
Yeah, they didn't even need education. They didn't even need education. It was, it was a working. All you needed was a working class job. Like, and your wife didn't even need to work. Like, she could take care of the kids. You got your nice little pad, and you're good. Like, it's more unattainable now. You know, and I want to say this too, because there is a connection with the economy. Like the ability for a Gen Z to afford things and not be in debt and stuff. It's linked to the economy.
Yeah.
And you know, from what they tell us, Gen Z is the reason why Democrats got elected in the country recently in the midterms. But it's like this. But here's the thing. Here's the disconnect. Is like the Democrat policies, and I'm not trying to be political because I have issues with both parties and, you know, I'm more independent, whatever. But it's like the Democrat policies, like their policies is what is breaking the economy. You know, Republican policies lead to a better economy, which means lead to better businesses, better increases, better salaries, better ability to live the life that you want to live in regards to like the American dream and so on. So Gen Z, like as a whole, like you can't really complain when you're voting for the people whose policies are intended to break you financially.
Right. And I want to add to that because it's really good that you brought that up, because a few years ago, like when I first started college, like my first classes in college, I took a Latino politics class, and this was around when like the presidential election was happening. So, you know, like everything was going around and things were, you know, flaring and stuff. But my professor was like very visibly pushing the class to vote for a specific party. And I'm not going to say which one, but it was very noticeable.
Maybe we know.
And the presentation she would give, the way she would talk about the other party, the one that she didn't want, like it was very, very visible. And you'd see a lot of the, like majority of the class would agree. I just sat in the back and I stayed quiet because I was like, if I speak up, I share my opinion, I'm going to get blasted. I don't have to drop the class. Yeah. But it was just insane to me because I'm like, there's no way she's not the only one. And this is a community college. This is a community college. Yeah. I can only imagine how it is at universities.
So I've been at both. So I was at community college, and it was like, but I paid no money. Yeah. I went to school for 2 years, and I paid no money. And now, after I graduated, I had a choice to make between paying $48,000 a semester.
Wow.
Right. I'm going to pay that off till I die.
Right.
Or I pay like $4,000 a semester, which still is a lot of money. And I have like, you know, I've been working since I turned 18. So my parents didn't let me have a job in high school, whatever. Yeah. And like I've been working since then. I've made savings and I've paid out of pocket, but I'm like, I can't keep paying out of pocket because I'm not going to be able to do anything, you know, type of situation. Yeah. So it's like, you go to these schools and you're like, I'm paying so much money, and I feel like as though, like right now, I was just talking to everyone in my, like we have a cohort for liberal studies. Liberal studies, everyone who's asking, it's not liberal, it's about education. Just want to put that out there. So like in that, we are all talking about how we feel as though we've got no information. We've been going to school for the past 3 years and have no information. Don't understand how this is going to help me teach kids. Like what is me imagining myself as a tree.
That's deep.
I had to do that in class yesterday. Imagine myself as a tree. Spend 10 minutes sitting in class imagining myself as a tree.
You do that in kindergarten. You're doing that in college?
Exactly. And I'm like, and I'm sitting there for 10 minutes. Imagine yourself as a tree. And it's like, I get what the mindset is. It's like, imagine playing yourself, being rooted. But in that, it's like, also, what are we talking about? Yeah. How is this going to help me educate children in the future type of situation? Yeah. And then it's like, of course, I don't want to pay that much money for school. Like, of course, like, where is this going to help me? How am I actually going to succeed in my job if what I'm learning right now isn't actually going to help me do that type of situation? So it's like, I'm spending all this money for no outcome. And it's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to be in debt for the rest of my life. You know, what is that going to do? Like, for me, teachers don't get paid a lot of money. So it's like, I'm going to rack up all this debt. And then go into a job that doesn't pay me well. And I'm pouring into all these children. Like classrooms now are 32 kids. Right. One teacher, 32 kids. Like,
wow.
It's wow.
And it's like, you have to pour into all those kids, you know, because those parents are working 9 to 5 every day. They can't do that same situation. So you're teaching those kids respect. You're teaching them those social skills. You're teaching them all that stuff. But it's like, you're not getting paid for what you're doing. It's like, where's the motivation? And that's why so many teachers are quitting their jobs. That's why so many adults, people just in general, Gen Z, none of us want to work because it's like, you're putting in all this effort and nothing's coming out of it. You're not getting paid for what you're doing. But in reality, at this point in our economy, there's no money that you can physically give us that is going to help us in the end of the day. Wow. No matter you pay us, you know, I'm not going to say no to Biden paying off my student debt. I'm going to say yes to that. Give me the free
it's
money.
only a percentage though. I think it's only like 10 grand. Yeah.
Hey, but my debt's only gonna be 10 grand.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Let's
like,
go.
but still, 10 grand for debt is.
But then inflation goes higher, and you end up paying it all anyways at the end of the day,
Exactly.
sooner or later.
It's just a recurring cycle.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Because it's wild to hear you say that, and that's really dope that you're processing how much you're paying, and now I'm sitting here watching you audit how your teacher's teaching you. You're like your own parent, right? Your parent would step in. What are you teaching my kids? This is how you're spending their time. So I want to ask you this. Do you, and now I don't know the answer. I'm not quizzing you. I genuinely want to know.
Scared.
I don't know the answer. What was the point of the exercise?
It was to make us more.
It matters because
No, it does. It does.
tree.
It was supposed to make us more
Yeah.
grounded before we started. It was like a group discussion. So it's like, you're supposed to be more grounded to the ground, find your morals, because we were having a deep conversation with each other about the economy. We were having it about like nature. We're having it about. So it's like it made sense, but in reality, I just imagine myself being a tree for 10 minutes. But like, I get what she's saying, but we shouldn't have to like take 10 minutes of our time to make ourselves grounded. We should be natural human beings and know our morals without spending that 10 minutes of, you know what I mean? Like, it's like that effort. Yes, it makes sense. Like I understand it, but it's also like, you shouldn't be at that point in your life where you don't know what you're grounded in, what your morals come from type of situation. And that in this respect of when people disagree with you, like even when people in class and you just have to go like this, no, I don't actually agree with anything that just came out your mouth. Like,
totally.
I'm like, I'm lying to myself. I'm lying to you. I'm lying to my professor.
Totally.
Like, it's just like, but it's a respect, like I respect your opinions and I expect the same thing, but that respect isn't actually there. And we have to take those 10 minutes to be even respectful human beings to each other. Like, it just like, it sucks because it's like you're wasting your time, but it's also like, what you're doing, we shouldn't have to be doing that because we were so messed up in reality.
It not only backfired on the teacher that she wanted you to have this big revelation, but your revelation was like, this is stupid. Well, I asked that because like
no, it's true.
I asked that because I talked to middle schoolers and they're like, what's the point of math? But we could all agree there's a huge point in math.
Yeah. I'm a math minor.
It's the educational problem that we haven't shown them the importance and the
We don't tie it to the real life.
Yeah,
We don't connect it to the real
so
life.
that's why I was like, just wanted to wonder. I was wondering about that because that's like, you want these young people to be like, math is actually dope and it's in everything. And
It's
it'll
so cool.
be the reason why you succeed or not.
Yeah.
Really, like basic math. And so that was pretty interesting. My mind was blown.
Yeah, guys. Well, I think we're gonna wrap up. Do you guys have any final thoughts? Yeah, we've been at it for a little bit now. So, let me just conclude by saying, "Go Gen Z."
Yes.
Yep. God loves you. Greatest generation ever exist.
Yeah,
smartest. Yeah.
All I
Hardest
gotta
working.
say is college is overpriced and workers are underpaid.
Amen. That's it.
Jermaine.
That's it.
Nah, man. Shout out to boomers too and Gen X, man.
Go Boomers.
Let's go.